My name is Phil Gilbert. I'm head of design for IBM, and catch your breath. Super excited to be here with you guys tonight. I haven't been with IBM a long time myself. I've been with IBM about 4 years. I was an entrepreneur for almost 30 years. I had 3 different startups before that, all tech-based. And when I started working with distributed computing back in 1982, you know, the challenge that I faced in my company in getting people to use the tool is that they had alternatives, and they were kind of afraid. And certainly the problems that I was interested in solving, which were the business problems, not the administrative tasks, you know, most business people then didn't really use technology all that much, or at least not computerized technology. And so we had to start making our stuff lovable. We had to get people to want to use it. So I did that for a while, and was really fortunate. It was the early part of the PC era and the distributed computing era, and got to know the people that were building at the time the Lisa, then the Mac, and then the people that were building Windows. And all of this time, we were all trying to make the computers more accessible, and certainly on the Mac side, more lovable. We wanted to draw humans in, not just give them another tool. I did it out of survival. I did it at the time to make payroll. Later, in the 90s, I kind of got a little more purposeful about it and started realizing that designing wonderful things actually was a differentiator that mattered. And so started working on designing much better software. My third startup, we did okay, and then the third startup got bought 4 years ago by IBM. And when Jenny became chairman in late 2012, she really wanted us to rededicate ourselves to client experiences, end-to-end, holistically, that were lovable, that were desirable, that were awesome. And as a part of that, there were a few of us at the time who felt like we really needed to flip our mental models about how we developed and delivered our software experiences in a way that was much more delightful to our users. And so about a year and a half ago, we announced a major effort to start doing that at scale. Let me give you just a few statistics to give you an idea of what we're trying to do. When we took a look at our software portfolio and took a look at the number of engineers in our company, we felt like we had about a gap of about 1,000 to 1,200 designers. And so we decided to go fill that gap over a 4 or 5 year period. It's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. We're hiring great designers all over the world to balance us out so that we start becoming a design-led organization. As a part of that, I started looking into what we had to build on, because it's not just a matter of adding talent. It's really about creating a sustainable culture that is a lot bigger than who we are. It's actually about changing the entirety of our company so that we start delivering a lot better outcomes. Our company's a very interesting company. About 80% of the world's transactions, economic transactions, run over IBM software. 80% of the economic transactions in the world run over IBM software. Now imagine a world, imagine Africa, where we are investing about $3 or $4 billion over a 3-year period to help grow the infrastructure and the middle class of that continent. So imagine Africa if we could accelerate the adoption of the software that powers economies. Just imagine that. What if we could, by making better software, what if we could accelerate it by a year? What if we could accelerate it by a decade? These are the kind of problems that we want to build a design-led culture to solve. Because fundamentally, we believe that our role on this planet, as Jody said, is the maker of markets and the driver of economies. That's what we've done in the past. It's what we have to do again. If you look at the changes that are happening in the world of technology today, it's going to take somebody that has the systems perspective of an IBM to coalesce all this stuff. And so that's what we started to do. We started to identify great talent. We started to onboard and hire and onboard great talent. And then we started trying to figure out whose shoulders we were building on. And as I started to get more and more involved with the design heritage of IBM, it was a very fascinating culture that we have to build upon. In 1956, the son of our founder, Thomas Watson Jr., hired an architect from New York City named Elliot Noyes. He made Elliot Noyes the first head of design at IBM. And Noyes he developed a constellation of designers and a legacy of design that's literally unparalleled in history, really, certainly in corporate history. Ray and Charles Eames worked at IBM in the 1960s. Jim Henson got his start building corporate videos, corporate propaganda for IBM. The first Muppets, if you go to Google YouTube Cookie Monster mainframe, you'll find a precursor to Cookie Monster was actually a corporate video made by Henson Associates in 1968 for IBM. We view design not as something that just manifests in a product, but we view design as something that is holistically applicable to everything we do, from our architecture to our, certainly to our products, to the experiences that we design in our design camp education program throughout. Our typography, Paul Rand did our logos. And so we are building this new culture based on this foundation that is very, very deep at IBM. Here's a picture of some of the great designers of our past. We're building today products that are as iconic as the Selectric typewriter. Watson. A lot of you guys have probably heard of Watson. We've just established a new Watson headquarters in Manhattan, and we are working on software-based solutions for Watson that will one day be as famous as this. Watson will change computing that much. In our marketing and communications department, we're still winning awards for how we communicate with people. This is a 178-foot think wall that was part of our 100th anniversary exhibit in front of the Lincoln Center in New York City. Parts of this wall today are actually at Epcot Center in Florida and in many of our offices around the world. This is an interactive wall that explains the history of invention for the last 100 years. We're still doing great industrial design. This is, if you can believe it, what mainframes look like today. The cool thing about this is not just that the doors that our industrial designers designed are truly badass. The really cool thing about this, you can't see it very well in this picture, but we invented an entire new way to offset the door and to reroute heat throughout the cabinet so that the efficiency of this machine is about 30% greater than any previous computer of this capacity, and the noise level is also reduced. And as I said, we're doing it today for Watson. We do experience design. The Masters, Wimbledon, here in England, is all designed by our digital agency called IBM Interactive. In fact, IBM Interactive not only designs the entirety of the Wimbledon experience, from the ticket buying process all the way through to the queues, to the on-site signage and wayfinding, but also we've got about 50 people in a bunker underneath Wimbledon and have designed the information systems and the analytics that are fed out to about 50 media outlets around the world. Our founder, Thomas Watson, used to talk about the fact that machines need to do more and more of the rote, automated tasks that people have to do in their work lives. And the result of that should be that it gives us, as humans, as humanity, more time to think, and think deeply about the systems and the problems and the possibilities that we have on this planet. That, I'm sure, sounds really highfalutin and kind of abstract and maybe even dreamy. But I will tell you, at IBM, and working with our leadership, what we're doing today in Africa, what we did starting in 1936 as the first Western company to be in China, what we've done in the Middle East, and how we behave in all these countries, I will tell you that it is much more than a dreamy aspiration. It really is something that we worry about and we think about every day. Again, going back to my own personal experience, as somebody who's only been here 4 years, somebody who spent 30 years building various pieces of software and then selling the companies or doing whatever, it was amazingly gratifying to have the products that we built at my last company go into IBM and within a year literally be being used in over 160 countries, be translated into over 30 languages, and to be helping people around the world do their stuff a little bit better, letting people go home a little bit earlier every day, or maybe getting a little bit more done. This is the challenge that we have at IBM. It's not easy. The problems that we're tackling are really hard. IBM itself, it's so big. There are challenges sometimes to working here. The problems that we're facing in our industry today, our industry is changing at a pace that, can you imagine getting 435,000 people to understand and to move that quickly? It's hard work, but it's worthwhile work. And it's a place where, like Ray and Charles Eames, like Paul Rand, like Eero Saarinen, like Jim Henson, it's a place where you can leave a legacy. And as a designer, as somebody who's invested your time in trying to figure out how to build better things, I think it's a pretty cool opportunity. So thank you guys for hosting us tonight. I'm going to open it up to questions now. I guess that's what we do. Is that right? We'll open it up to questions. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Jody and Mr. Gilbert, for sharing your insights, first of all. I understand that kind of the human-centered design aspect and kind of design thinking is very much part of IBM's DNA.
Yep.
But for 450,000 employees, I'm just wondering if and to what extent are you still challenged with getting buy-in internally on a day-to-day basis?
Great question. So the question was, all right, so I get it that you have this aspiration to applied design. You may be doing it in some places today. You've hired some people. It's based on the principles and practices of design thinking. But seriously, 435,000 people, how are we doing it? And where are we on the journey? Is that fair? Well, great question. So it's funny. Do you all know who David Kelly is? David Kelly, the co-founder of IDEO. You all know who IDEO and the D School at Stanford? David Kelly was one of the founders of IDEO. He and Bill Moggridge combined forces back in the 90s. They formed IDEO, the design firm. And David is now, although he's still the chairman of IDEO, he's the head of the D School at Stanford. IDEO and Stanford are both partners of ours in this effort. And I was talking to Kelly about 6 months ago, and he's a very deep thinker, and he's been on TV shows, and he's done all sorts of stuff, including, invented the mouse, or didn't invent it, but built the mouse with Steve Jobs. And Kelly goes, we were talking, and he goes, so how you doing? And I was talking about how he's doing. He goes, well, you know what? He goes, with any change effort, he goes, the good news is this. You only have to convert 25% of the population to win. And he goes, oh, wait a minute, that's still 100,000 people. So it's a big task. It's a big task. Let me tell you just a few stories about it. And we're in the middle of it. By the way, this is a journey we're taking. The hiring alone, just to back of the envelope, kind of get us in that ballpark range of how many designers we would ultimately like to have working on our products. Just the hiring alone is a 5-year to 6-year effort, and we started it last year. So we're in the very early stages of it. The change management part of it is probably even got a longer tail. And we know this going in, and so that's kind of how we're viewing it. But I'll just give you a little bit of statistics around that. So as a part of doing this, I have this mantra that I say, talent plus practice equals outcome. Talent plus practice equals outcome. If you have great people, and if you apply, well thought out principles, you will get great outcomes, most of the time. And so we really kind of applied this, and so we are gauging our program on these first two things. We know that we're not going to get great outcomes to market the first year. It takes time to build software, it takes time to build the competence, it takes time to even educate people on the broader teams, the multidisciplinary teams, on how to apply design thinking principles. So we start with talent. I've talked a little bit about that. We're hiring great people. We developed an approach. I don't want to call it a methodology because it's not that heavy, but it's an approach based on design thinking. The problem with design thinking as a practice for really big complex problems and problems with very distributed teams. We have developers and product managers and designers in many, many countries around the world. And oftentimes these problems in these products are so big that they're developed in multiple places. The problem with the practices of design thinking, and I'm going to wrap this up, I'm going to come back and you're going to see that I'm going to actually tie it back to your question here in a second. The practices of design thinking, it's hard to scale them because it's such an experiential thing, right? Empathy maps, user experience maps, all of the artifacts of design thinking, it just is a heck of a lot easier if you're all in the same room and you're running those laps together. And so it was a problem that actually I'd started working on several years ago, and we've really pulled those together here into a set of practices that we call IBM design thinking. And it's basically fairly traditional design thinking approaches with 3 pillars, 3 tactical pillars put around them. That's our practice. That forms the basis of our practice. And we then started thinking, all right, so if we're going to practice this, we can't just hire designers and tell designers how to do design thinking. That's kind of redundant. You all kind of know how to do that. What we actually have to do is we have to pretend that we're talking to designers, but we actually have to bring the multidisciplinary teams together. And we have to teach these things that you all know, like the back of your hands. We actually have to teach our product managers, our engineers, the people in our testing organization, even people in sales and marketing. And so we invented this concept called Design Camp. And so we have, for new hires, it's actually a 3-month design camp that's very cool and very experiential. But for our internal product teams, we have a 1-week experience that we have designed. And they send about 8 or 10 of their leaders. Well, it turns out that we started this last May, these design camps. And since last May, we've had almost 60 product teams through design camp. So we've had 600 or 700 people. Now, of the 400,000, there's about 30,000 total that build our software products. So we've had about 600 of those 30,000 through. It turns out, and we've had them in from Germany, we've had them in from Paris, we've had them in from London, from Hersley, we've had them from Shanghai, we've had teams from all over the world. And when they go back, not only do they start doing better work, and not only do they think it's pretty cool how they're building things, but the teams around them see that. And so just today, the reason I was late is I was in Hersley holding a global town hall meeting, and we're starting to get pings from all sorts of teams around IBM that they want to be a part of this. So how I'll wrap it back into your question, we're in the very early stages of this journey. The outcome of this journey is uncertain. In 2020, we'll write the book, and it's either going to have a happy ending or a sad ending. Either Harry's going to end up with Hermione, or the other guy is, who she now says was the wrong choice. I don't know how the book is going to end yet. I truly don't. I know that if we get a bunch of great people, it's going to end really, really well. Because I do know this, the excitement around the company, the excitement by the product teams, and the pull of us in, the number of people wanting designers, the number of teams wanting to learn design thinking and to apply it really, really well, is way beyond the initial metrics that we had put in place. Initially, we had hoped by this time we would have had about 30 teams total practicing IBM design thinking. And today, in total, we have about 80 to 100 teams practicing it, or at least trying to, 60 of which have been through design camp and are doing it fairly well. So we're very gratified by the results. It's 3 or 4 teams at a time. We run design camps about every other week. These 1-week design camps, it's 3 or 4 teams at a time, so it's 20, 30 people at a time. But we're starting to see a little bit of a network effect. We're starting to see a little bit of that multiplier that we think we're going to get to critical mass. My guess is that by the end of this year, 2014, we're going to be very close to that 10% of the 30,000. And I think that I think then it's all going to have a life of its own. But it's hard work. And we're also starting to see some successes in the marketplace, which is a big part of any change program, is to show some early wins. I'll give you this crazy statistic about enterprise software. And you guys probably didn't realize this, but did you know that there's not too many enterprise software things that trend on Twitter? It's not surprising that it wouldn't. But last week, we demonstrated one of our products that our designers in Austin have been working on for about 3 months. We demonstrated it to a crowd of, I don't know, 6,000 or 8,000 people at a concert, at a conference last week in Orlando, Florida. And from the demonstration of the prototype, this crazy thing called IBM Mail Next, which is a code name for something we're going to deliver in Q2 that we showed. IBM Mail Next was the number 10 trending hashtag for a day on Twitter last week, which is crazy. Nothing should be that lovable about enterprise software, but it was. It's a really compelling piece of work, and it really gets. It's kind of a whole new take on messaging and mail that really resonated. So we're starting to see some early wins too. Yeah.
We all tend to design from our environments and our experiences, and I wanted to know, what are the key elements that IBM are focusing on at the moment in order to innovate for the next century coming? And I would like to design for, I would like to design things and create things that people don't understand that they need yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure IBM, with the data that you've collected and your observations of, you know, the world internationally, you would have that scope.
Yes.
To be able to see what people will need that they don't understand that they need. So
Yep.
what are the key elements you're actually observing?
So I would say that there are three fundamental trends that we are designing for today. The first is big data and analytics. We have a fairly unique perspective of what's happening in the world of big data and analytics. And the linchpin of our strategy is Watson in that space. And so while we have a lot of properties and a lot of very fascinating problems to solve in both the collection of the information, one of the most fascinating things that we're going to work on, in fact, there's going to be a project in the winter design camp. So we have about 35 new hires that started January 15th. They're in the 3-month design camp that I talked about. The design camps are broken up about half and half. About 6 weeks they're real-world cases, but they're fairly contrived cases. So we break the group up into sections of 10 or 12, and each section works on a case, and then we play back the results. The second 6 weeks are quite different. The second 6 weeks, the entire class gets broken up into teams of roughly 5 each, and each of these teams of 5 is actually working with somebody in the IBM business solving a real-world problem. It's just time-boxed to 6 weeks, okay? The expectation is that there's some prototype or some set of research that comes out of it, design-based research that comes out of it, that will actually inform something within 12 months in the business. That is, ship a product or ship a version of a product. In one of the projects that the design campers are going to be working on for their second 6 weeks of this winter design camp is in the Watson space, and it's a fascinating problem. One of the things that we've seen in whether it's Watson or whether it's Siri-like technology that you can buy from a company called Nuance or Google Now or things like that. Okay, I get that it's cool technology and it's magic, and you can ask it a question and it will give you an answer, okay? The problem we've seen in the world is what happened the 12 months before you got all that information in there? What information do I need? Because I'm not even sure what questions I'm going to ask. And oh, by the way, collecting that information is really, really hard. You know, just think about it. Think about a problem here at the school. Imagine you wanted to put Watson, underneath some sort of support. Well, maybe it's a student hotline here at the school. What data would you put in for that? I mean, certainly the course schedules, I get that, but what about the mental health stuff? What about the transportation stuff? Where would you get that information? Literally, what pieces of data would you need? And who owns those pieces of data? Do you have the rights to put them in there? Does the CIO of the school have access to it? How do you integrate to that data? These are really, really hard questions, and at the scale of Watson, when we start doing oncological research at the MD Anderson Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic in the US, or we start doing drug research for Bristol Myers here, right? This question of just understanding the data, where do I get it, what exists, how can I model the data so that I can model asking questions so that I can test whether the data I'm getting is right. So this is one thing that we're seeing in the area of cognitive. Watson itself is fascinating technology. You're going to see some very interesting runtime uses of Watson over the next year. But the problem we're now doing is, okay, how do we, again, to my earlier question about economies, how can we build an on-ramp to Watson that takes 3 years to 3 months? It's taken 3 years. We've been working with MD Anderson in Houston around one strain of cancer. And it's taken 3 years to figure out the information and the relationships between the information. Today, they're saving lives with it. Today, there are doctors that stood up with us at our Watson announcement in January and said, I can't imagine practicing my field anymore without Watson because there's too much information. There are thousands of strains of cancer. Imagine the impact on the world if through design, if through user research, if through great tooling, we could take 3 years to 3 months, and if we could take 1 to 1,000. So that's one thing that we're working on. In the area of systems of engagement and cloud, you know, we are seeing this issue of security is really, really important. Both security as well as the data governance are big, big things that companies with lots of data, you know, we've seen the Edward Snowden leaks. You now start seeing Google and Twitter and Facebook and Microsoft and everybody is starting to harden their lines under the ocean so that nobody can tap, right? It's not just the US. Every government taps. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. And yet there's still government laws that say data has to be in country, right? These are hard problems. They're design problems. We don't even know all the problems because we don't know all the users yet. So this is one of the things that, you know, I hold high promise for design to really help us with is really helping us understand users around the world that are doing really important problems that are stymied because of the access disparity of technology. And the third thing I'll say is that we also see today, you know, this Cookie Monster video, right? It was made in 1968. Why did we use Cookie Monster in 1968? We used Cookie Monster because people were scared of technology back then. And so we used this funny device to actually create an engagement that broke down the barriers of fear. That was a fairly simple problem. Today, we don't have a scared populace, but we have a very disparate populace. We have a very different problem today. Today, the disparity of access to technology. In a developed country, the disparity of access between you and your grandparents and everybody in between is very, very big. Oh, and by the way, it's probably not just you and your grandparents, but it's also the disparity of access among people who haven't had the privileges that you all have had with respect to higher education. There's a disparity of access today that we've never seen before, and it's getting wider. There's a disparity of access between what you have here in the UK and we have in the US and what exists in rural Egypt, Central Africa, rural China. So there's tremendous disparities, and we have to confront that as technologists and as people who want to raise humanity up. This is another big design challenge that we kind of see, and we do have a unique perspective on each of these, particularly the latter ones, because we do have this global perspective. We engage with people. I love one of the things that Jenny has said before. She says we are not in countries, we're of countries. And I really like that. I really like that concept. So, yeah, good question. Anyone else?
So, what kind of designers are you looking for? Is it like
That's actually a good question. I'm glad you asked. If we haven't said that, we should. So we kind of have we like all designers, but we classify people among 5 different disciplines. User research, design, user research, user experience, which is, you know, the holistic, almost a services or design thinker kind of approach. Visual design, design developer or front-end developer. This is the person that's actually going to be kind of the maker in the maker space, doing the prototypes. And then facile with front-end technologies, web technologies, mobile technologies, and then industrial design, fairly traditional industrial design. So we're looking for all types. We have a need for everybody. We have We have a lot of need. Yeah.
What's the process that you go through to pick up your candidates? Or
Great.
how, or what qualifications or what standards does your candidates need to be at to go to your to your camps?
Sure.
Or like how do your candidates approach you or vice versa?
Yep. So how do we hire? Well, it starts here, and then you've met Jody. You met Andy, I think, or maybe. Andy Gapper's over there. He's at Hersley. Jody's with me in Austin, Texas. The application process is you send an application, or you send an email to me or Jody or Andy, or to a thing called redesign@ibm.com. So that's how it gets started. We then take a look at your CV, but more importantly, your portfolio. We are very big on every designer should have a portfolio, and we think even after you get hired, we think designers should maintain portfolios. We think it's important to kind of think about your work and the evolution of your craft as always improving, always delivering into that. And so we take a look at your portfolio. We will interview you on campus. Maybe it might be over the phone. It kind of depends on facts and circumstances, but certainly here we would talk to you on campus. And then the next step in the process is if you're on campus, and our bar is high, but I can't imagine anybody coming here and saying that we have a very low bar for our candidates. So that's kind of accepted. But we do really, we try to get under the skin of your portfolio a little bit, because we are a lot more interested in your process, your internal process as a designer, as a craftsperson. We are very interested in how you got to those outcomes. And so we really try to delve underneath it. We try to understand your thought processes, your critical thinking skills. Those are very important to us. If we then think that there's a good fit, then you'll get invited for a fly down. Now this is a little bit different country to country, but generally speaking, we like to get you in our studios. We want you to meet more of our people. Look, I tell recruits all the time, I look for three things myself. My team looks at your portfolios, I look at your portfolio, but they really delve into it. I'm looking for three things. Number one is intellect, raw decision-making capabilities. It's hugely important. Number two is your passion. And I'm not talking about cheerleading. I'm talking about why will you get up the morning after one of your designs has been shredded and it's on the floor and it's been rejected? Why will you come back the next morning? What drives you to do this? That's what gets you through the hard times. And finally, we try to assess your integrity. Now, part of that is do you say what you're going to do and then do you do it? But part of it is your approach to craft. That's part of your personal integrity, is how do you approach your craft every day? And are you improving every day? We try to assess those three things. That's how I look at you. When I talk to my team, I actually don't talk much about the design things per se. They do that. I ask for every single candidate we hire. Those are the three things I ask. Talk to me about this. Tell me why this person meets our bar. I also say this: you should be looking at us for the same thing. You should want to work around smart people. You should want to work around people that challenge you. You should want to work on problems that are challenging. You should want to change an icon and not just go to work someplace that's already in place. You should want to be around people that have passion. They're going to get you through. You're going to get them through. And finally, you should be working around a place that has integrity and around other people that have integrity and integrity to the process. All of us have a debt to we all have a debt to our craft, and we try to pay it down a little bit every day. So that's how we do it. Fairly traditional process, redesign at IBM.com, interview, portfolio review, fly down. In our fly downs, we do another portfolio review, and you actually will present your portfolio in front of the other people that are there on that same fly down day. That's always very interesting to see people from around the world that you're meeting for the first time, what their work looks like. And then to the extent that then we think there's a go forward, then we issue the offer. And if we issue the offer, then you'll start, you all would start either January 15th or July 15th for either our winter or summer design camp, whichever one, depending on your graduation. By the way, is there anybody here who is an undergrad, who is not graduating next year? Okay, so we also have what I think is going to be the world's best intern program. We ran it, in fact, Jody was our guinea pig. Jody ran our first one last summer, and it was really cool. And in fact, the response that we got from it was so great. We're running 2, and we just hired one of the top. We've hired a lot of students from the Savannah College of Arts and Design in the U.S., SCAD. We just hired one of the favorite professors at SCAD, and he's actually got the coolest job in my whole group. His full-time job is to run the intern program. And so Devin O'Brien is recruiting worldwide for 2 classes of 15 interns this year. These are 6 or 8 weeks. 8 weeks this time. Last summer it was 6, but we're doing 2 8-week internships. They are going to be awesome. Devin is a very cool guy. It is a great experience. You come to Austin, Texas. We put you up. I've forgotten what all does it in terms of benefits. What?
Well, we pay you.
So you get paid. You get put up in a hotel.
You get a car, shared car amongst the group, and then there's lots of events, but in its own working hours and real products.
Yeah, it's real stuff.
Real projects with real business owners.
Yep. So the intern program, if you're interested in that, is we're very excited about it, and Devin is just. I got a feeling the 30 students this year are going to have a very special experience. In 2015, we're going to start running three programs a year. So the intern program, for all of you who are not graduating next year, is a real viable alternative, and we'd love to see you again. Redesign at us.ibm.com or at ibm.com. Anything else? Yeah.
So IBM seems to be more suited to rather large-scale products or larger companies that have a budget that can suit it. And I was wondering, what is it? Are there any concerted efforts from IBM in terms of providing services and the like to startups or people that actually?
Yes, and I would say watch this space in less than 30 days. The cloud-based services that are appealing to the role that we call this person, we call them born-on-the-web developers. I think that there's going to be some very interesting things happen in that space. We certainly are working on it, and it's a big part of what we are building for 2014, to deliver in 2014. And I think very, very soon you're going to see some very interesting and unexpected capabilities being delivered. Yeah, it's a huge focus for us. And by the way, developers at startups and startups themselves, on February 27th, I'm going to be spending the day out in Silicon Valley. We're doing a huge outreach with the venture capital firms. We started this last year. And we're starting to help provide some services to some of their portfolio companies. You know, certainly given my background as startups, it's something I'm pretty passionate about. So we're starting to do some very interesting things with startups. We're starting to, I think, deliver some capabilities that are going to be very, very compelling to startups. And if we do that really well, the interesting thing is that there's a lot of developers in our traditional enterprise client base around the world that want to work that way. So being able to offer a consumer-grade, marvelous cloud-based experience for developing is actually going to help inside, you know, Barclays Bank, as well as inside hundreds and hundreds of startups. One of the other things that we announced last fall and are delivering now, although we're delivering it in a limited sense right now, is we gave away free access to Watson APIs to a startup community, and we announced a $100 million startup fund for Watson solution development. So we actually are now evaluating as a, you know, almost as a venture capital company over this fund. We're starting to evaluate companies that are building on the Watson APIs, and we're building a very interesting ecosystem of startups that are building Watson-based applications that I think is going to really bear some fruit. Probably not so much in 2014, but starting in 2015. So startups are a very big part of our growth strategy. Great question. Anything else? Well, hopefully we've answered a few questions, and hopefully, you know, if you're intrigued, you'll continue the journey of exploration with us. It's pretty fascinating. You know, big isn't better necessarily. Sometimes even not usually, but scale is interesting, and so I'll just kind of leave you with this to kind of again plant a little bit of an understanding of kind of the scope of what we're trying to do here. Obviously, changing the culture, huge. We just moved into the first half of a 50,000 square foot design studio in Austin last November. The second half of it we'll be moving into in June. The second half is fascinating. It's probably very much like the spaces you all work in here quite a bit. It's actually modeled, the first half is completely open and very collaborative. It's very team-based collaborative, open kind of traditional studio setting. The seventh floor, the second half is actually a collaboration between us and IDEO and Stanford and Steelcase. And the only other studio like this in the world is at Stanford. And it's created of a grid system of what's called huddle rooms that can be configured and reconfigured on the fly, in the entire room, including the whiteboards, including the Post-it notes and everything, can be lifted off the rack system, put in a Home Depot shopping cart, and recreated on the fly. And these huddle rooms this room could be divided into 4 spaces, or maybe not 40 spaces with our grid system, but a ton. Very innovative working studio in Austin. We've announced that we are building new studios in Dublin and Shanghai. And we're investing in our existing studios in Hersley and an offshoot in Germany, in our facility in Boblingen, Germany. And we also just announced another 50 or 60,000 square foot design studio in New York City, what's called Silicon Alley, in the cool part of the Village in New York City. We're going to have physically probably more commercial software-based development studio space than anywhere in the world over the next 24 months. By the end of 2015, our Austin, Texas studio will likely be the largest software product design studio in the world. And by the end of 2018, IBM itself will be overall the largest software design studio in the world, our global studio. Building this, being a part of building this is hugely rewarding and a lot of fun. I say all that to say, look, just being the biggest isn't the goal. We want to be the best, but just from your own personal standpoint, the ability at this stage in your career to be put in a position where so much growth is going to happen so soon under you means that you're going to be put into leadership positions, not just people leadership, but also ownership and leadership of significant parts of very important products. You're going to be put in these positions way sooner than you would otherwise be in a place that wasn't growing this fast. And I think as you think about the possibilities for applying what you guys have been working on here, that's a very interesting kind of thought. So with that, I'll leave you. Thank you so much again for your time and effort. Again, I apologize for being late, but you got all the corporate propaganda stuff down your throats, and that's part of the exercise too. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.